And Stephen Mbide is on the ground, and we have the Lord Mayor of Kampala. He's one who has been buried in events over the last 2 weeks, especially with regard to aspects of the environment. The questions that will be asked to him, well, I hope he can give some light on what negotiations are underway right about now. Good morning, Stephen, once again.
Yes, good morning to you, Chris. And when you talk about the negotiations, I know the Lord Mayor has had, of course, with his team, engagements with the National Environment Management Authority. I know Karihaho is also aware and could have been part of those engagements. We shall also be putting those issues to him along the way. But I know calmness is returning to Nairobi, Nyeri, Mombasa, and some areas or cities within Kenya. But all is not over, because we know the cost of living is still high and the government has to function and has to run the programs that has already set out. But how will government be able to run these programs when we know that the budget, they have deficits, but also the bill, that is the finance bill, where they were hoping to get some more money to finance and run their programs, has now been taken back. It's just 2 days to the end of this financial year and to the beginning of the new financial year. But first of all, good morning to you, Lord Mayor Erias Lukwago.
Good morning, my brother. Good morning, viewers.
Let's begin with the way you look at the events in Kenya. Why did it take long for the commander-in-chief? Why did he see this coming? Just a day before, he comes up tough talking, calling protesters criminals, treasoners. But just hours after, he walks back on his statements. Did he see this coming?
Well, it's uncharacteristic of Ruto, the person I know. He's not a flip-flop like that. Today you were issuing decrees, actually. He issued a decree, a proclamation that he was going to act tough. The next day he recants what he had earlier on stated. It was rather surprising. But of course, it was bound to happen, given the resilience of the youth who were championing this revolution, these protests, because they seem now to be determined. You know, Kenya, over the years, since the violence of 2007, 2008, they have been building civic competencies. So I think Ruto, in his own judgment, underestimated the capacity of these youth, their determination, their resilience, their tenacity. He underestimated it. And reality had to set in, I think, with their determination, even unleashing the might on them. And the other thing, I think, which compelled him to make a U-turn is the fact that Kenya, unlike Uganda, is not a personal estate. He doesn't own the army. He thought he would rely on the might of the state, on the army, the coercive machinery of the state, but the police could not match the surging of the youth. They couldn't counter the youth power.
So he has previously said that the police leadership is the weakest. In fact, referring to the IGP as one of the incompetent officers in the world.
Yeah, over the years, since his election, he had made attempts at owning state institutions, because he ascended to power on the ticket of the hustler movement. But he wanted again now to change tact and rely on the army. Of course, with the influence of his mentor here, General Kaguta Museveni. You remember how we hailed him so much at his inauguration?
Does that, the way the changing of the tactic, does it sound, or like, can you liken it to the adage of saying that absolute power collapses, but absolute power collapses absolutely?
Yeah, he wanted to build his own empire, his own army. You remember after that nasty incident of the death of the former commander-in-chief, Francis Ogora, who died mysteriously in a chopper crash. And you recall very well, Francis Ogora belongs to the Jaluos. He's of the rural community. He comes from, he hailed from Siaya. Now, he wanted now to get a replacement from his own backyard. Eldoret, Wasingisu here. General David Musamia, something like Tarus, who he thought he would count on to build his own empire, borrowing on the template of his predecessors. No, not the of Moi. He thought he would do that. He would get a Kalenjin to head the army and build his empire. It boomeranged, it collapsed, because even these current protests, even in Eldoret, fire is burning. So because this, he miscalculated, because he thought he would build that empire to take power or to grab power from the Hassler community and give it to the army, so that his might is built on the army rather than the Hassler movement. That is the crisis he's facing right now.
But of course we know that Kenya is already living in a crisis, because yes, they have the budget deficits, the inflation is too high, they have to function, they are moving into a new financial year. How do you expect a government to function when, of course, you want to balance the conditions of the people? You have to tax them, but now you're even walking back on your own. Parliament sits the day before, and then you pass, and then you walk back. What's the destiny for Kenya in moving into a new financial year?
The crisis they are suffering right now, in law, we call it the odious debt crisis. I don't know whether you have heard of that term, odious debt. You borrow from multinationals. You borrow from the donor community, IMF, African Development Bank, you name it.
And they've gone there before.
Exactly. Unfortunately, that money is not spent on the key sectors of the economy. It's spent on luxuries. That's why even yesterday when he was making that statement, the recanting statement, he tried to pander now to the interests of the protesters by saying, you see, we are even going to make adjustments in the state budgets to get rid of these luxuries and this kind of, wasteful expenditure and so on and so forth. He was just taking a gamble, because already he's in the middle of what we call an odious debt. An odious debt does not in any way benefit the economy, benefit the people, the citizenry. It rather benefits those who are in power. It's typical of what is happening everywhere in Africa. But
when you see a president walking back just hours before, aren't you setting a bad precedent? Because the following day, Kenyan or anywhere else in the world, young people or wherever they are, they could rise up and they say we're not retreating. In fact, today they were saying we are moving to coming for you from State House. And you're setting a bad precedent that because you can easily be swayed back, they will still come back and protest, and then you walk back on the same issues that have been discussed and passed.
You see, it was, I think, inevitable on his part, because I've told you, he is not in control of the coercive machinery of the state. He can't rely on it. And it is his own constituents which is chasing him. You know, Kenya, I've told you, over the years they have built that capacity, the civic competence, to give meaning to the provisions of Article 1 everywhere in African constitutions of African states. Article 1 is Jerusalem. Power belongs to the people, and they shall exercise it in accordance with the... Himself, he also had to re-echo it. But the youth, the Generation Z, is now trying to do their best to give meaning to the provisions of Article 1, that power belongs to us. So what you are saying, he could not sustain the kind of approach he had undertaken earlier. This is what I'm telling you. He could not sustain it. It's the reason now he's taking a gamble. And now they seem now to be helpless. When you hear the statements coming like from the Vice President Gachagua,
he literally movement. He's on a different side. He's on a different side.
But he's even a hypocrite. I'm sure he loves what is going on right now. But he's putting on a smoke screen that is with the
people, the hustlers.
No, not with the hustlers. he wants to come in like he's pleading. Yes, he's pleading with the hustlers, not to host who? Ruto. So basically that's what is happening. And he's in it alone. You know, previously, if you follow the Kenyan politics, theirs is tribal alliances. Yeah. It's kind of a coalition government. Since the downfall of Moi, it has always been a coalition government. Yeah. But of the current government is not. No, this one is not. And you can imagine it's only a Kalenjin government. He made a very, very big mistake. I think he goofed so much to bring Gachagua to represent the Chikuyus in the government. That was not sustainable. Musalia Mudavadi can hardly do anything for him. So he's all alone right now. You know,
Mlodi, I want us to bring this conversation also, localize this conversation. Many times we see the local people here, the hustlers here, are crying out to the leaders. They think they should provide the hope. For example, recently we've had the casual laborers now and then coming up, raising alarm, raising voices that, you know why? You know what? We are hustling very early in the morning. By 5 a.m. we are on the streets. We are not paid for months. But not only them. There are so many categories of local people here. And their cries, they keep on crying. Maybe they don't have the resolve to protest to that end. But their cry is not heard by you, the leaders or the administrators of our country.
I think you are misreading the dynamics in Kenya and Uganda. You are making a wrong judgment. It's totally different.
I understand, yes, but what I'm saying, many times the people have concerns. You don't listen to them as leaders. They push them to the wall until they cannot move. Maybe the Ugandan style, they don't have the resolve like the Kenyans do have, but the concerns, the rising cost of living in Kenya is also happening elsewhere in Africa, and the leaders seem not to hear.
This is what I'm telling you. Ours is a military government. The Museveni who is leading this country is a gorilla, a gorilla leader. The Museveni we have here of today, he has always told you he uses the Ruero methods to take charge of the state affairs. You get it? He's not a Democrat. By his nature, by DNA, Ruto, I can at least give him credit. He's a Democrat. He only tried now to assume a different attribute which is not within his own character, being a dictator, being a fascist, being I don't care kind of leader.
You know, you are blaming it on Museveni, the man, the president, Museveni, the president. But I also know that in Kenya, we've seen religious leaders making their foot and voice heard, stamping it to the ground, even within these protests. You've seen them speaking with one voice. But here, you will see even religious leaders, even just kneeling before you, the leaders. You hear members of parliament not speaking in unison over matters that concern the local people. And even in your council, I know that there are so many issues that are concerning the local person, but you wouldn't hear leaders, even at the local level, speaking with a uniform voice for the concerns of the people.
Talking about the concerns of the people and the response of those in leadership to those outcry, to the public outcry rather, and drawing parallels between Uganda and Kenya, it boils down to one thing: civic competence. I've told you about the stature, the state structure. Fine. The state structure, ours being a military rule, theirs being a democracy. It can be a pseudo-democracy, but at least there's some semblance of democracy in Kenya. But the one critical thing I wanted to point out is civic competence.
What would it take to have that civic competence?
Civic competence is important. The post-Moi era has seen the political dynamics change drastically and fundamentally in Kenya, that one single person cannot take decisions for the rest of the majority, the rest of the citizenry, which is not the case here. Here, Parliament is stampeded by Mr. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, which is not the case with the. Ruto tried to stampede the Parliament. It has collapsed flat. All the institutions here have been subjugated. Even the civil society movement has been subdued by Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. In Kenya, for example, these protests are not led by political leaders. For all intents and purposes,
they are kept aside.
Raila Odinga is laid back. He's focused. Yes, he's just focused on his candidature at AU. Yes, that is his own main preoccupation.
And he's being backed by Ruto now.
Exactly. But now the civic competence, and actually, Ruto has actively participated in that. You know why? You know why? The Hustler movement he started. The Hustler movement himself, on which he championed his candidature to ascend to power.
You know the person you are accusing of being undemocratic dictator, that is President Museveni. I know for now, for example, he's coming out and saying he's vowing away from what we've been seeing before. He's saying now, look, I'm getting serious. I'm getting to my years. He says he's getting to 80. But also, you know, he's now waging a war on corruption. The members of parliament we're talking about, some of them are even up to now in jail over corruption that the president is now fighting to stamp out of this country.
But, you want us now to discuss posturing, grandstanding, symbolism. You want us to discuss that? What you see, it is the same General Museveni who wrote a tough letter about the Mabat scandal. And he came up with different clusters of culprits, that those who are in this category will be treated as such. These ones will be prosecuted. But what action did he take? Just a handful. Was it only Nandutu, the poor Nandutu, Chitui, and this gentleman from Kayunga? Was it only those three? Did he touch the Prime Minister? The Speaker herself? Even recently when he went to visit our constituents, what did he say about her, whatever she's doing? What
and of course
recall the statement Mr. Museveni made. You see, look at all this. Even the Prime Minister who read the budget, the Minister for Finance, Matia Kasaija, he considered that he also got Mabad. They were all involved in this scandal. What action did he take? So this symbolism, it's just a huffing and puffing. It's going to happen and fizzle out too. Just wait. It's just about, trying to appease you, to please you, to say, please, we are taking action, so that you get excited. And
now that you have also talked about Anita Among, the Speaker of Parliament, with her comments in Rengo, and also other members of Parliament who were accompanying her, talking about how when you have maybe one of your children here goes to a neighbor and then steals, brings back home, and you can take part and share that loot. It's okay. And some members of Parliament were also clapping. What does this tell about our Parliament, where we will have more than 500 of them, and this seems to be the sentiment. We have over 500 of them. But now, when you see a head of his parliament and members of parliament are clapping with such statements, what does it tell about our parliament, even before you move to the president?
But I think it's a parable we are used to of robbing Peter and paying Paul. You see, General Museveni is the one who brought that notion. Anita is just recalling the same. When Betty Kamya wanted to rein in, of course, I don't know her commitment to that, but at least she came up with that position that she's going to do a lifestyle audit. And Museveni told her to go slow, lest the money will be spent out of the country. They said, please, as long as they have invested here. So how different. And I heard even Mr. Mwenda justifying that. Mwenda, in many of his writings, would say, but as long as you plow back within, no, just get the money. At least if you share it with the communities, you invest here locally, somehow it can benefit that the spillover effect. If it is invested, is plowed back, it's invested. You can imagine that rationalization, that justification, building impunity. And it is now catching up with us.
But also members of the opposition are not so clean about this when you're talking about corruption. But also, we also know that some of them, away from accusations, either go silent when these things are happening, or they keep a deaf ear.
No, the issue goes back to civic competence. Let me tell you this. We have a leadership crisis, true. But what about the citizenry? Let me tell you this.
You keep referring the citizenry. What will it take for the citizens?
One lesson we should learn from Kenya. There are so many lessons to learn. But civic competence is important because ultimately the leadership should be accountable to the people. And if the citizenry is debilitated, is weakened, like it is the case in Uganda, where all of them are just pleading.
The competence you're talking about, which also goes to destruction of property, even including a Uganda House Embassy, including a Parliament of Kenya, destruction, that is the civic competence you're talking about?
Let me tell you, violence begets violence. If the state is violent, and you have a competent citizenry, an empowered, emboldened citizenry, you'll have that clash. Look at our constitution, Article 3. Mr. Museveni brought the doctrine of resistance. Actually, his main catchphrase in all the struggles he has had, it's about resistance, building the citizenry competence to be able to resist all unconstitutional tendencies. So you get it, the point. So here, forget what will salvage this country, what will rescue this country from the precipice we are right now, is to have a competent citizenry. And that's what we have been doing in the FLC, in the 4GC, in the People's Government. All the struggles Dr. Besigye has championed, which I subscribe to, we have always been struggling to build the civic competence. It's not about fighting on behalf of Ugandans. You know, that notion is wrong. That the leaders should fight for Ugandans. The Kenya experience is teaching us a lesson.
Is that the competence, the failure for having this civic competence that explains the cold feet, the cold deception that we seem to see with your movements as FDC, Front for Democratic Change, Katonga group, when you've been moving across the country, we've seen some semblance of a cold feet. With Dr. Besigye on the front, you and Dr. Salam Musuma and the rest, part of the group. Does that explain?
Exactly. And Mr. Museveni being a warlord, a guerrilla warlord.
And what does this mean for the future of your group as FDC?
Yeah, this is what I was telling you. Mr. Museveni being a warlord, a guerrilla warlord, mastered this art very well. He understood it very well. That you do everything possible to deny the leadership the capacity to build the civic competence. That's why you would not allow...
Isn't it a weakness on your part that people don't have trust in you, that group that is moving across the country?
Which kind of weakness? You see, you try your best to hold rallies. In Kenya, why they have managed to build the civic competence post-Moi regime? It's because they have had free campaigns everywhere. Raila, Ruto, Uhuru, all of them. They can hold rallies without any interference from the state. And none has had any opportunity to build a personal army. It has not happened because of the term limits and because of the dynamics they have right now. So eventually they are built. And if the leadership has the leadership is disorganized, the citizenry will come in. So that is all the critical thing we need to do. That is the magic bullet.
As you build that critical force, for now we see the opposition, the United Forces of Change, and kind of disarray. You know what's happening within NUP, you know what's happening within your own party, FDC. Seems to be, it seems not be landing at the same destination. What is causing all of this? What is failing you as the leaders of opposition, you as the United Forces of Change, to focus at the same direction?
You see this, I'm sorry to keep repeating myself. When you build civic competence, it transcends political boundaries. In Uganda today, this pseudo-multipartism is blindfolding us. People are hedged into their own cocoons. If you are NUP, They don't want to see you hobnobbing with the FDC. If you are FDC, you shouldn't hobnob with the anti. If you are anti, you shouldn't be seen like this. And Museveni looks at those fault lines and builds on that to continue with these politics of divide and rule. So basically, that's what we have to contend with. We have struggled to deal with that. It's the reason we have tried to build these common platforms since the days of FOC and now the forces of change and so on and so forth. So we have tried as much as possible. And the call I'm making to not actually the leadership, but to the ordinary citizens, please, don't be blindfolded by these party lines that for me, I am FDC and I can only act as FDC, period. Don't tell me any other thing. You get it? I'm color blue, I'm color blue. I am ready, I'm red, I'm red. I'm green. In Kenya right now, it's not ODM. The Hustler movement, which Ruto himself built under the Jubilee platform, is at the heart of it. At the heart of it. Even those who are in NRM, that you are yellow. Because when you look at the crisis we are faced with, issues to do with the heavy taxes right now, the odious debt crisis we are having, the persecution, the mass evictions of the people right now being championed by NEMA illegally, and so on and so forth. All these issues cut across. And you do not need to hide behind party colors to deny yourself the right and the opportunity to fight for your country.
You know, when you talk about also the issues of fighting for the people and also bring in the issue of NEMA eviction, the evictions done by NEMA, we know that even up to today, save for that, they've promised people they will be coming back next week. But when you go back to Lubigi, Nansa, Naganda, Masanafu, and towards YC, you see the condition of the people, conditions of the people, those who are staying around, they don't have anywhere to go. And we have the leaders. Yes, I know you were in an engagement with NEMA. Away from what you discussed there, the suffering, I know we have to protect our environment, but when you go back to those areas, children are now out of school, schools have been demolished, the future of these learners, where are you putting Uganda? I know we have to save the environment, but where are you putting the future of these learners and the people?
It's a manifestation of the brokenness of the state structure. Because if you had a functional state structure, you work out a systematic mechanism of handling issues of environmental protection, like the kind of situation we have right now. I heard the other day General Kaguta Museveni ask that those of you who are settling in wetlands, don't you see that you are doing wrong? That you are degrading the environment? But you will also pose the same question to him that Mr. Museveni, the head of state who has been at the helm of this country for the last 40 years, what arrangements have you made for the survival of those very people who are settling? Because a welfare state has to make a provision for its own people. Where are the low-cost housing projects in this country? They are means of survival. You have not built markets. You are chasing out people from the streets of Kampala. That please don't operate on the streets of Kampala. You have not established markets where they are going to operate from. You have not created decent houses for them under that scheme and whatever, the local housing scheme. So what do you expect? Mayor
Erias Lukwago, let's just take a quick commercial break, then we come back and also dig deep into the issues of human settlement, but also reorganizing Kampala, the issues that are affecting the common person within Kampala. We'll go for a short commercial break. We'll be back with Mayor Erias Lukwago. It's still morning at NTV. Stephen Imbido Mfefeswe. Still with the Lord Mayor of Kampala, who is also the acting president of Forum for Democratic Change, Katonga side. And he's also a part of the United Forces of Change that brings about altogether the opposition forces that are trying to unseat President Yoweri Museveni. But before we went to the break, we are still talking about the issue of evictions that are happening in areas of Kampala and Wakiso. That to be specific, Namungona, Nansana, Lubijiganda, and Waise. So Erias Lukwago, I've seen elsewhere where companies are coming up and seemingly, by public perception, they are in wetlands. I've seen also some developers heaping a lot of garbage, also filling sand in water bodies, trying to create investment for themselves. But you go to a wetland, or land that is presumed to be a wetland, you raise down a school that is housing over 200 children, the future of these children, the future of the parents, the parents who are also out there hustling where they reside. You have already demolished the buildings. This was, for me, was unthinkable. In the middle of the term, couldn't authorities, you had a meeting with the NEMA, is there hope?
In all this, what disturbs me is again the gullibility of the elite. Like the case was when we are dealing with the challenges of Kampala during the time we had Jennifer here as the executive director. I don't know why the elites tend to believe in iron fisting methods which are not anchored on the law. I don't know. They like it that way. So I've seen many people justify this. Yet there is a law which is very, very clear. The NEMA Act of 2019, which repealed the one of 1995. Created this institution, charged it with the duty of establishing systems of protecting the environment and enforcing the spirit in Article 237 of the Constitution, where wetlands, forests, water bodies were vested in the state as natural, as our own assets. Rather, as the facilities we need to protect jealously and guard. Now, NEMA ought to have started with the systems. Actually, not NEMA. Let me start with the government. Buildings.
Even in Kampala, you were the city you hold.
No, before you come down to local governments, it has to start at a national level. Government created the Uganda Land Commission. Uganda Land Commission started giving out leases in wetlands. You'll find the people you're talking about in the cars, they have leaseholds. The people have leaseholds along the shores of Lake Victoria.
These people have also, you may fear talking about Buganda Kingdom, but also they've been to Buganda Kingdom, they've been given chapa, they have their chapa, the land titles from Buganda Land Board.
I will not speak specifically about the hapless Ugandans, those ones who are now affected by the NEMA operations, because now that's where the center of focus is. But my concern is largely about these big-time so-called investors who have gotten chunks and chunks of land. Buganda Land Board, for example, has not given out land titles for the forest reserves. I'm talking about assets preserved under Article 237, the wetlands, the water bodies, the forest reserves. Almost all forest reserves are finished. Wetlands are almost finished. People have gotten leases. So why doesn't government rein in the Uganda Land Commission? Do you know the person heading Uganda Land Commission after Nyakaisiki was dismissed? Was interdicted actually. Beatrice Ibiencha Nyakaisiki. She was interdicted. And to date, what you see is just the Minister for Land is moving around. Actually, the State Minister Mayanja. Anyway, back to the point. NEMA did not put in place systems as well. The law is very clear on local government systems. NEMA is a thing on ground. They were supposed to create structures countrywide. The district environment management committees under Section 26, 27, and 28 of the NEMA Act 2019. And these structures were supposed to liaise with the NEMA, which operates at a national level, to put in place mechanisms of protecting the environmental system. And these systems would ordinarily involve creating those mechanisms of preventing people settling. Before you react, you have to put preventive measures. And this was supposed to be made by this committee comprises of the Lord Mayor, the MPs, and many others.
That's where I was going. We know, this a system failure that we seem not to have coordinated movement? You have the National Fiscal Planning Board, you have the National Building Review Board, you have local government districts, you have the Parliament, you have KCC or whichever municipalities. Couldn't we have coordination that even before you set up Factory A, Factory 2, these are the parameters. This is a no-go area. Before we see all these things happening, where are the leaders? Why do you keep heaping all the blame on NEMA when you have all these bodies that are supposed to be working in tandem?
When we talk about institutional failure, when we talk about it could even be, I don't want to say anarchy, but a system where there is a failure of the state structure, where institutions cannot function. This is exactly what we are talking about. Now you are witnessing the consequences of a broken structure of the state. You get it? You have mentioned quite a number of them. And there should be collaboration amongst all these institutions. And for us, we do not have that. The simplest NEMA would do is to put in place that district environment committee. We have over 150 districts. Ask the chairperson NEMA, the ED rather, if they have made attempts to create one. At least in our meeting, we agreed that before 15th of July, the one of the cities should be in the place. 2, also halting all what is happening.
All right. Lord, we keep this conversation going because I know this is still happening. But your final words to viewers, the public, to the population that also feels impoverished or they feel they are hustling for the day.
Let me first start with the NEMA. Please respect the resolutions we made. Halt all the the operations, the illegal operations going on until we have constituted this committee, and also we have handled the issues of demarcations and the compensations which are supposed to be done for people in Bwaise, in Chinawataka here, areas of Kasokoso, Nansan, and wherever. Please respect the resolutions we made. ED, NEMA. To the people of Uganda, the citizenry, the last word. All we are doing as leaders, the crusade championed by Colonel Dr. Chizabe, is to develop civic competence. This is exactly what we need. We should borrow from what is happening in Kenya and empower the citizenry can champion a cause even without the leadership taking charge of the same. This is exactly what we want. Stop insulting one another. Stop the abuses you are making against each other. Please stop it. Let us build a civic competence, and then we champion the cause to liberate this country.
The chief political superintendent of the city, Kampala, Mayor Erias Lukwago, a seasoned lawyer, former legislator, but also the acting president, Forum for Democratic Change, Katonga, but also a leader from United Forces of Change. Thank you so much for your time and for welcoming us in your home. I now hand you back to studio for the rest of the programming. Stella Nante is coming on with Mwasize Mutia at 9 a.m.